Good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seats. We've got a bell ringer of a final conversation here this afternoon. Thank you all for being here for a really full and fascinating day. I'm delighted and really honored to introduce our final spotlight conversation, Ambassador John Huntsman. Now, before I get to the ambassador, let me first say what a tremendous job our teams have done to bring our forum together. And what you've seen over the course of the day, from Ambassador Burns to NASDAQ CEO Adina Friedman to Deputy Attorney General Monaco to Deputy National Security Advisor Dilip Singh, is truly impressive, and we've had some terrific panels to boot. The range of backgrounds, expertise, skill sets here, and the topics from illicit finance to supply chain resilience to cybersecurity to AI and the future of the financial system show that economic policy cannot be made in a silo. And it really proves the thesis of the GeoEconomics Center, which is that national security is so interconnected with economic security, and that the reverse is also true. That's not just true in the US, it's also true for our allies and partners and those who would seek to do us harm worldwide. But no event on GeoEconomics would be complete without a discussion on the future of the dollar. The dollar, of course, is what underpins the global economy. And as we've seen with sanctions on Russia in the past several years, when the dollar and the euro work in tandem, they create a pretty powerful force. But using that force comes with tremendous responsibility and also risk. There are few people better equipped to help us navigate those responsibilities and understand the risk than John Huntsman. Ambassador Huntsman is the only person to serve both as U.S. ambassador to Russia and China. He was the 16th governor of Utah and also previously served as ambassador to Singapore. Though most importantly, his most critical assignment, I think, was as chairman of the Atlantic Council from 2014 to 2017. He currently serves as the vice chairman and president for strategic growth at Mastercard. And so he's especially well placed to help us navigate the geopolitics, the public-private sector dynamics, and the challenges and opportunities facing the U.S. at this critical moment of competition. So let me turn the floor over to Ambassador Huntsman and welcome back to the stage Josh Lipsky, Senior Director of the GeoEconomics Center. Thank you.
That was so kind of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jenna, and thank you, Ambassador, for being here on what is such a busy week. And I just have to acknowledge this is very special because not only do we have the former chair of the Atlantic Council here, we have the current chairman of the Atlantic Council here, John Rogers, who is really, in so many ways, the reasons we have a GeoEconomics Center at the Atlantic Council. And I just want to take a moment, it's special to have both of you in the room and Fred and Jenna in the room together to thank everyone for making a GeoEconomics Center possible so we can talk about these issues, talk about the intersection of national security and economics, which have become so critical.
It also makes it particularly intimidating to have John Rogers over there and Fred Kemp over here.
They're taking very good notes throughout the whole day.
What to do.
Yeah.
And I'm still on Fred to try to spell my name right, but he'll get it one of these days.
So let's start with UN Week, because as we were talking about before, there's a reason why we've decided to do an economics event here during the UN General Assembly. And I'm wondering what your perceptions are so far this week from the meetings you've had. The word of the day we keep hearing, it started with Ambassador Burns, who is one of your successors as ambassador to China, fragmentation. And I wonder what that means to you and what you're picking up in your conversations.
You know, it depends if you wake up on the optimistic side of the bed or the pessimistic side of the bed. And I love Bill Burns. And I love Nick Burns. We used to call him the Burns brothers. And Nick does such a great job for us in China, and I have great respect for his work. So I could make an argument that would sound highly pessimistic about where the world is trending. Instead, I like to see the optimistic side, because we are resilient as people, and nation states, because they are full of people, are resilient entities for the most part. And I look at the digital wave of opportunity that encompasses us, and I see a lot of hope and opportunity in terms of the ability to connect modern day technology with opportunities and hope in places where they're needed most. And so I can articulate a message of optimism as well. But what concerns me most is that the geoeconomics piece is not working. We don't have a trade game in the world. The Chinese do. They're moving out and developing technology, trading with ASEAN, a 10-member consortium. The same level of trade there that exists between the United States and the EU. I didn't think I'd ever live long enough to see that, Josh. We're not in the trade business. We don't have much of a trade game. Europe is struggling, and the rest of the world is kind of figuring out what to do. So geoeconomics, I would argue, is a missing piece right now, and I say that's not a good news message because geoeconomic lifts people and it provides opportunities, and it connects nation states, and it brings people together. And when you are devoid of a level of geoeconomic connectivity, then the world does not run as it should. But I have to say the word that came to me this morning because at Mastercard headquarters down the street, we hosted a digital transformation forum. And it was a multi-stakeholder affair. We had public-private sector, we had diplomats, we had policymakers, and it was really a discussion about the way forward and how to think about, first of all, identifying opportunity and the pitfalls of digital development. And out of that, in my mind, came empowerment. We're on the cusp of the ability to empower people like never before. My fear is that the silos that stand in the way and the government knows best approach is going to make it difficult. It really will have to be a combined effort between public and private sectors in allowing innovation to flourish before we kill things with regulation. I'm speaking now of AI and the progress of digital trade, where we have no rules of the road to speak of. And so it's really a confused mess right now. So the side of me that says I'm really optimistic about where this goes is tempered somewhat by the reality of the world today and our ability to get together around common cause.
It's interesting because it sounds what you're talking about is really geoeconomics. In a way, we think about it as more the positive side, the trade side, the reason people want to be part of a Western financial system, versus sometimes how we talk about geoeconomics is the tools we see every day, sanctions and export controls. But what I'm hearing from you is, and Dilip said this as well, Dilip saying a shift more toward the positive side, especially on trade.
That's right, Josh. So geoeconomics encompasses a lot. The balance sheet that I'm looking at is the positive, proactive growth side of geoeconomics. And I say that because I was deeply involved in that as a trade negotiator, as Deputy U.S. Trade Representative. And we did a whole lot of agreements. The gold standard was Singapore, we did. Australia, South Korea, we got started. India, TIFA, Western Africa, TIFA. And you know what? When you would enter countries, it would, for at least as an American, it would represent the best that my country had to offer. The goodness and the willingness to come together, to trade as partners and equals, and to share the best of our private sector with, you name the country. And right now, I mentioned free trade agreements to somebody the other day, and they said, free trade agreements, we can't use that language anymore.
Well, I was just, it's funny you said
what?
that because I
Then
was
what are we
just going to
supposed to
ask
call
you, how do we get back to that concept? Because there are a few areas of bipartisan agreement in Washington, but one of them is we don't talk about free trade anymore.
We don't, and I get the discontents, they're very real.
Yeah.
And they have been outed over the last few years. And we're kind of in a self-correction moment. Onshoring and reshoring, which I think is really important for workers in this country. And we have to combine the best of what was captured during that period of globalization, which is largely misunderstood, and the mistakes that were made. And step back and say, what are the lessons learned here, and how can we apply it going forward? Well, it means we, at some point, we got to put workers front and center. We have to have the right kind of training. We have to have the right domestic overlay of critical industries to make sure that from a national security and competitive standpoint, we can basically manage our way forward. So I think there's some things happening now that are very, very important. What concerns me is largely the level of distrust that exists globally, particularly in the West. And it's really driven by nation states that have not been delivering for citizens up to expectations. And so you lose faith in your elected officials, in your bureaucrats, in your institutions of power. And I've seen it happen. Listen, as a former governor, the only thing you have is the trust of the people when they vote for you. And then they send you off to do whatever you're going to do. And they give you trust until they take it away. And right now, the citizenry of a good part of the world are distrustful of politics. And how do you regain that trust is going to be really important. Meanwhile, you've got Russia that is only too happy to take advantage of the diminution in trust in the West, and he operates a very effective set of tools in the attacks and the messaging and the deep fakes and all of it. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. And he would say that I'll take your country down without ever firing a shot, because I can divide you from within. And then Xi Jinping is moving forward, building his own base, struggling economically, singularly in charge like we have not seen since even before Deng Xiaoping. And he's only too happy to take our best intellectual property and apply it to certain critical industries like EVs, which are now 5 years ahead of any products that we make in the United States.
So what's the answer?
The answer is you cannot stop the march of technology. You have to harness it. We've always done that in the past. We've harnessed technology for growth, and we've harnessed it for inclusive growth. And I'm worried that on the growth side of the balance sheet, we'll break out with all kinds of new approaches to problem solving with AI. And on the other side of the balance sheet, we're going to have 2 billion of the world's population who are not there. And that, to me, is totally unacceptable, and it should be unacceptable for every citizen of the world. So how we progress going forward with some kind of inclusive growth strategy that allows public sector, private sector to focus on bringing everybody up to a level of opportunity. And that has not been done. Yeah. And shame on the world for not doing that, and we're talking down the street about who knows what. But we've got some real work to do for this world to be a stable and prosperous place.
I agree with that. We take that mission very seriously at the GeoEconomics Center. We just published new research on this from our senior fellow, Nicole Golden, on this specific issue of driving the global majority, meeting their needs where they are. But what about the data side of this? Because when we talk about lack of trust, what we see happening in some countries, the siloing in different sectors, industrial policies, but also when it comes to data. I want to own my own data now, I want to own my own digital stack, and you see a very different world than even 10 years ago when it comes to cross-border data flows.
Yes, we do, and this is a very complicated area because some countries are rushing ahead in the creation of sophisticated tech stacks. You name the industry that is being powered by it. The data localization rules, the desire to want to own and control the rails that facilitate the flow of information and transactions. I mean, we're seeing it in countries like Turkey and Brazil and India on the DPI side, certainly, which you can't do much about because it is a sovereign right for a country to do that. And many countries will deem it to be within their sovereign right to protect the digital identity of their citizenry. So how do we get beyond this so that we don't have competing data regions in the world that are marching forward and building new industries, and there's no interoperability, there's no connectivity between them? That would be a recipe for disaster, to have blocks created that have doors that are closed. Instead, we need to step back and create some models of interoperability around data. It's going to be very hard, but I think unless the United States and China and the EU pick up the pace, and maybe the United States and the EU doing it first, So if the United States and the EU can create something called NATO, which is a really difficult thing to do, and it carries with it an element of trust and interoperability and the sharing of information and all of that, you know, we can certainly come up with ways to benchmark and share knowledge around data policy, what the standards should be.
And
what
you
the
think China
safeguards
could be
should
a part of that? Part of that
well,
standard setting?
I'm a little reluctant because I've been down this road before on climate.
Right.
And every time I see the United States and China meeting on climate, it's like, okay, I wonder what they have that didn't exist 15 years ago in the conversation. You know, you meet round after round, and unfortunately, that's kind of how it goes. And China's sometimes okay with that because process is better than the ultimate outcome. But I worry about this part. I think the argument has to be made that ultimately, unless there's an open, transparent, safe, interoperable data standard for flows in terms of international trade, then Chinese companies are going to suffer competitive impact. The rest of the world will go forward. And you could probably make that argument. I think China would want to safeguard its economic interests going forward. They have to understand that there's a reason to engage. But we don't have the framework or the infrastructure institutionally to deal with this right now.
Right.
So in the days where the WTO would convene a major conference, and I was at one such in Doha for the launch of the Doha round, all the issues that we would have on the table today for problem solving around trade policy, none was even in the discussion. They were all goods and services for the most part. Yeah, and that was easy to deal with. You know, it was all tariff, non-tariff barriers,
Right.
trade facilitation, intellectual property, legal remedies, you know, state company relations. Data, on the other hand, is a very difficult area to define, and it's going to take some real work and trust between some negotiators who are able to put some plans together.
I have two final questions before we welcome our final panel, which is on the future of the dollar. But first, a just reflective question to you. As Jenna said, the only person to serve as U.S. ambassador to China and Russia. So simple question, what advice would you give to your successors in those roles right now?
Listen, I'm just a musician turned public servant, so what do I know? I can barely pronounce GeoEconomics.
You're not alone in that.
You know, the biggest challenge in coming from my country is we don't understand the behavioral characteristics of empires. And they're quite different than how we see the world. And they draw from culture, they draw from millennia of practices, of regional disputes. And they're generally, in the case of China and to a lesser extent Russia, pretty homogeneous in the way they see the world. They share a lot of common traits in that regard. We in the United States are a confused, chaotic mess of a lot of people doing different things and innovating, which is great. It's been the recipe for success in the United States. But we tend to apply the model that we grow up with in the United States to empires. Why can't one do this, or why won't they do that? Or why do they have conflict here and conflict there? Without really understanding the deep historic roots of carrying the mantle of empire. So Putin is who he is, not just because he has Peter the Great hanging on his office. When you go in, that tells you everything you need to know about how Putin sees himself on the world stage. Or Xi Jinping, who is the son of heaven in the sense that he carries the mantle of contemporary China. We don't understand that dynamic a lot, and in order for us to be effective, more effective on the world stage, I think our diplomats going to these key posts are going to have to problem solve around a level of thinking that we're not accustomed to.
That's good advice. Final question. I'm about to invite up to the stage for our last session leading experts, US, European officials on the future of the dollar. You started optimistic, pessimistic about fragmentation. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of the dollar?
Oh, I'm optimistic about the future of the dollar. Yeah. And every time we get down and say that the dollar is going to weaken because of A, B, and C, structural problems within the United States, a new industry is born. Yeah. And when you consider that AI will be $1 trillion industry by 2030, when you consider that cyber is a $7 trillion problem, a problem in need of a fix, and the fix will carry with it opportunity, you forget about that. Innovation in this country tends to create new structures and opportunities and growth patterns without us even recognizing they're happening under our feet. So I think the dollar will remain stable as a result of our ability to innovate.
Well, we'll leave it on that
So
note.
long as we have rules of the road, right?
And it finishes perfectly as we get to the last session. Please join me in thanking Ambassador Huntsman.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you.